Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we are talking about not Zets. Don't worry, we'll get back to that eventually. But life has just been really busy and I've also been really lazy. So the combination of those two don't really make well for consistent uploads. But that's besides the point, because aside from those two things, I have also been working on my biggest project yet. And as you can see from the thumbnail and the title of the video, that's right. I became a Kamen Rider. Not really, I dressed up as one. But I'm gonna show you how I did it. So really, this started about 2 to 3 months ago, somewhere before Halloween. So somewhere time in October, late September, early October. Now, ever since I was a Kamen Rider fan, I've always wanted to be a Kamen Rider. And one week I was sick and I had a lot of free time because I was sick, and so I couldn't hang out with anyone into that. And I thought, well, what do I do with all this time? And I decided, you know what? Might as well become a Kamen Rider. Eventually, because it took months. It took months to get it done. Most of the time was actually the kind of like planning stage before the even whole designing part of it. And we're gonna get onto that right now. Now, to cosplay as a Kamen Rider, you basically have two options. One is you buy the costume, and two is you make it yourself. And with Kamen Rider cosplays, they are quite expensive. Yeah. I'm sure that's no surprise to anyone. So I thought, well, I should probably make my own then, for money reasons, because the car cosplays are like around 1,000 range, and that's like almost like the bare minimum for how much they cost. They can go to like $2,000, I think. It's crazy. So I thought, okay, I'll make my own. And so now, which Kamen Rider am I going to make? Right? There's a lot of Kamen Riders I could pick from. I could pick Build, Geats, X-Aid, not X-Aid. Since I was going to be making this cosplay, I wanted to pick a Kamen Rider that was going to be easy to actually create the costume of. But I also didn't just want to pick a really easy Kamen Rider like, I don't know, Sky Rider, for example. One of the Showa riders that I had no connection with. And as I was sitting there thinking, I love Build, but Build has a really intricate design that, for a first time cosplay designer, I've never made a cosplay before. The closest thing I've ever done is make the Optimus Prime Kamen Rider drive shift car, but no actual like full-on costume. And so I had to pick one that I actually enjoyed and liked the design of, and had some kind of connection with, and that was easy enough to actually make for a beginner. And so as I was sitting there thinking, the answer was right there all along. Ichigo, the original. At least not that one, the Shin Kamen Rider one, because I thought that was cooler, because he has a trench coat. So I decided to go with Ichigo from Shin Kamen Rider. Now, I could have also gone with Nigo, but design-wise, I just like Ichigo's design more. I thought the helmet really fit with the rest of the trench coat and the dark color scheme and all that. And so we're going to go with Ichigo. The original probably would have been easier, but I really like the design of Shin Kamen Rider more. And at this point, I hadn't even seen the original yet. So that was the basis. And after that, I did a lot of research on how to make cosplays and stuff like that, and different techniques, what tools you'll need, and also research on the Shin Kamen Rider design. So a lot of the time, basically the first, I would say, couple of weeks was just me doing research in my free time and understanding it, how I would even start making this. Luckily for Ichigo, a lot of the things I needed for the cosplay were things I could just buy separately. I didn't need to buy like very customized things, like he wears leather pants, just regular boots, a regular trench coat, stuff like that. There are some specialized things like the belt, the helmet, and of course the chest armor he has on him. And so that stuff I would have to figure out ways to get that. Now, for the chest plate, from my research, I decided to use EVA foam to make it, and I decided to use 10mm thick EVA foam for armor, since it was going to be a thick plate on the chest. The first thing I need to do was to actually make a pattern so that I could draw the outline and cut it out of the foam. And so I did that with loose leaf paper. And I actually have them right here. As you can see, here is one of the ab pieces, and then here is one of the chest pieces. And I did it on both sides so that I could do it on both sides, both armors, like that. And instead of wasting more paper. Now, one tip I will give to people is if you're making a pattern, try not to use loose leaf because it's just too thin and really flimsy. And so actually using this as a pattern was pretty finicky at best. But as you can see here, this is what the original plan was. I measured it all, and I also had slopes because the armor on the outer edge of it has like doesn't go straight perfectly 90 degrees down, it goes on a slope. But when actually cutting out the EVA foam, it didn't really turn out that well, so I ended up just making it a straight line, so that didn't work out. And then I also have the grooves here on the actual armor that I designed, that I drew out, and I use a protractor to basically get the angles. And in practice, it was really more like a rough measurement type of thing, but it was a good reference to have this. So the final part didn't exactly end up like the patterns, but you know, it served as a good basis for it. There's that, and I also had where the screw holes would go. Now, when cutting out the EVA foam, I actually have a couple of failed attempts here. This is what it originally looked like before it got painted and all that. And you can see I got it in white so that I could use a pencil to draw on the EVA foam, so that if I made a mistake I could erase it and just redraw it on here. And this is what it ended up kind of looking like. Obviously this is a failed attempt because this one, it doesn't have enough. This one was miscut on top here and became too small, and the edges weren't that perfect, which I would have to sand down and all that to get it to look better. And then here is where it would have had the scoring. So here I would have taken a knife and then basically scored it, which means not cutting it all the way through, but just enough so that there's a line, and then I could heat seal it, which would expand the gap so that you would actually see it better. And then I also have another failed attempt that I ended up using to test out what the heat seal would look like. I also test fitted it on a regular just t-shirt to see what it would look like, and I was pretty happy with how that looked. After that, I drilled in the screw holes, and the type of screws I use for the cosplay are called Chicago screws, and they're just these really nice screws that also come with a screw hole that you could use it. I ended up not using that. I just screwed it straight into the foam because the hole was a good size for that, and it stayed stuck on, so that works great. And originally I was going to go with silver screws, but because of the color scheme of the cosplay, I ended up going with gunmetal gray for it to make it look make it less shiny and fit in with the rest of the costume. Now, to paint the actual EVA foam, what I first did was I took some Scotch tape, made a loop around it, and then tried to tape it to the back of the EVA foam to use as a handle. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that well, and it just kept falling out. So what I did was I hot glued it to the EVA foam instead and used that as a handle, which actually worked pretty well for the most part. And then for the actual paint, I used camo green Plastidip, since that was a pretty common way to prime EVA foam for cosplays for my research. But the main thing was that I just had to get that color so I wouldn't have to paint it again. I just get, you know, the primer in that color anyway, just to have it. So it was just one paint phase without having to do a primer and then paint. It was just the primer, which was in the color of what I wanted, if that makes sense. That was a little confusing. I did not have to explain it like that. And the paint turned out pretty well. I really liked with how it ended up looking. I decided not to go with a clear coat just because I heard that sometimes with a clear coat it could end up cracking. So no clear coat for it. So it's just a couple layers of the Plastidip, and then I made sure to get the edges and also a little bit on the edges on the back of the plate where you wouldn't really see it because when it's attached to the jacket, if I move up and down, you could you could see white on the back of it, so I decided just to paint that just to make sure that it was basically green wherever anyone looked, essentially. And after that dried, let it dry completely, to attach it to the actual leather jacket, that thing finally arrived. And obviously I did another test to make sure to see how that would look with the leather jacket, and it looked up really well. With that, I ended up using Velcro strap tape, and that turned out actually pretty well. In the image I'm showing right now, that I thought that would be enough to attach it to the leather jacket, and it was enough, but the problem was that it was hanging on really loosely to the jacket, so it wasn't really form-fitting. It kind of looked like I had like plates on, like dinner plates, instead of actual like armor that wrapped around me. And so to solve that, I just basically cut a little bit of bunch of little segments of the Velcro tape and then taped it around the edges of each armor so that it would stay more wrapped around the body, and that made it look a lot better. Now, one thing I wanted to say before we continue is that originally I wanted to make this cosplay as accurate as possible to the source material, that being the film. But as time went on, I decided, especially with the chest plate, that it would just be easier to make it, I guess, more stylized, because I was never going to get it completely 100% accurate to the film. I have a 10mm foam, which isn't thick enough to have like the slits for the air vents on there. And it was also a bunch of other things where I originally was thinking about getting green cosplay gloves, and then, or maybe just regular cosplay gloves like medieval night gloves, and then painting them dark green like in the movie. But I wanted the cosplay to be more functional, so I wanted to use actual like items that aren't just made for cosplays, and we'll talk about that more later. But because I decided to change the overall goal of the cosplay, for the armor, I originally was going to have just like how in the film he has his chest and then his two ab pieces, and then there's like the bottom ab piece has like a little plate on it. I decided to not do that for this cosplay, just because, one, I was worried about it getting caught on the belt, and then the second reason was because I was worried about the EVA foam being too thin to make that plate, and it would just end up like ripping. And so I just have it as a, like the original, where it's just the three blocks of armor on him. And because of that, I also wanted the costume to, like I said, be actually functional, which meant that I wanted to really be able to do stunts and stuff like that, just like how a normal Kamen Rider suit would work. And so I decided to put gaps in between the armor so that there was space so that I could crouch down or crunch or anything like that. Have any ab movement, you know, like an action figure. I wanted to have more articulation when wearing it. Now, the next part of this cosplay was the helmet. And so for the helmet, I just bought it off of AliExpress, waited for a good deal on it, got it, and for the most part, it's pretty much the same as I bought it, unmodified. Only thing I did add was the helmet ended up being too big for my head, so I took some foam and basically glued it to the helmet so that it would actually fit more snugly and it wouldn't shake when I shook my head. It also came with dried decals of little screw, which took a while to attach, but it made the helmet look way better. And the only issue I really had with the helmet was that the horns, or the antennas for the insect antennas, were too big to fit into the slot, so I ended up having to sand it down and then super glue it to the helmet, which took a bit of work, but it turned out pretty alright. There's a little scuffs here and there on the helmet that if you look closely you can see, but for the most part it's not noticeable. For the belt, I just got a regular DX belt. I was originally thinking about getting the CSM belt, but after looking at that price, the regular DX belt works perfectly fine. Only really difference is instead of using the plastic belt straps that doesn't fit me, I used a regular belt for that. Now, the scarf. I ended up getting a woman's red scarf. It was really thin, and in the film, the way they tie it to the neck, I found to be not as great in real life, just because one, it was that it hung too low and it kind of covered the belt all the time, so that was kind of annoying, especially when you wanted to show off the light gimmicks on the belt. The scarf became really annoying, and because the Kamen Rider always has his scarf onto one side, it's not directly down, and the way they tied in the film, it always ended up naturally sliding down for me into the middle. And so I had this other way of tying it where I basically make a U out of the scarf, put it, and then poke it through the ends of the U. And there's going to be like some B-roll playing right now showing you what I mean. And that's how I tie a scarf. I just found that to be just overall better for the look of the cosplay. Now, going back to the whole idea of making this cosplay look more functional, more grounded, basically, I got tactical gloves. And the thing about the tactical gloves is that they have different materials on it. So if I wanted to paint it dark green, there would be some parts on it that would be the original color, just because it's not made out of leather, and I would be using leather paint to paint it. I was also worried about the paint chipping, and so I basically tried to see if there's any dark green tactical gloves. Unfortunately, there really wasn't any in the color I wanted, and so I really had an option between like black or camel green. And at first I was thinking about getting a camel green one to fit more of the functional aesthetic that I was going for, but after making an edited photo of what it would kind of look like with the color scheme, I overall ended up deciding just getting black gloves, because I felt like the camel green just popped out too much against the rest of the costume. And I actually thought the black gloves turned out pretty well on it, and looked really nice with the rest of the outfit. I was worried that the black gloves would add just more black to the rest of the costume, and I thought there was already a lot of black on there, not enough like highlights of different colors. But it actually ended up looking great, so I was really happy with that. I also got rubber boots. So instead of leather boots, I got rubber boots, just because I thought, more functionality. So I got rubber boots that actually, protect against the rain. And while leather boots would have worked just as well, as I was looking for different boots, I just didn't really find any that I liked the color of. And of course I could have painted it, but I just saw these rubber boots and I thought, yeah, this is the color, the dark green I want for the cosplay. And so I ended up getting it instead of having to, get leather boots and then paint it. These work, in my opinion, just as well. And then for the trench coat, I really tried to get a trench coat that looked very similar to the one in the film. And in the film, they used trench coat that kind of looks more made out of like wool or cotton. I ended up getting a trench coat that looks like basically like a raincoat, super thin. But a lot of the specific things that the trench coat in the film uses, this also has. So the main thing is like the waist strap. It has that, and I just thought overall it really fit what Shin Kamen Rider looks for me. And the main thing about the trench coat too is I just like the Shin Kamen Rider design with a trench coat. It looks fine without it, but I just prefer it with the trench coat. And because I was trying to make it affordable, and I would be wearing the trench coat the entire time, I ended up basically not making the wrist covers and the wing on the back of the leather jacket, since the trench coat would be covering all of that anyway. And for the trench coat, I got an extra large, just because normally I wear a medium, but because I was also wearing a leather jacket underneath the trench coat, I got an extra large, and I found it to fit pretty well. The trench coat is a little long for my liking, so sometimes if I'm going upstairs or something like that, my foot ends up stepping on the actual trench coat, just because of how long it is. It acts more like a cape than a trench coat. But overall, I think it turned out pretty well. And now I'll show you what you all have been waiting for, and that is the results. Here is the cosplay. As you can see, it's Shin Kamen Rider. Got the scarf. Got the trench coat. And then got the DX belt right there. And here's the helmet. Here. And you can see if I shake the helmet, because of the foam, it doesn't move around too much and I shake too much. And hopefully the audio isn't too bad. Listen to this. Here's a hole behind 360 of the cosplay here. Now it isn't perfect, as you can see down here. Sometimes if I cross the chest plate, starts bending in a weird position, but it allows for a lot of mobility. So I can go like this, inch down. I can do Ichigo's iconic henshin, even though it was never done in the movie. I can still do it. You know, fight bad guys and stuff. And even though you can't see the lower half, yes, I do have the boots on. And you can see right there how mobile that was. I will be taking the helmet off because it is very hot in this thing. And you can also see that the eyes are lit. And it has the open mode, like in the film. Like that. There's a helmet, so you can hold it like how it's held, you know, like a bicycle or a motorcycle helmet. There's that, and this looks really nice here. It even has the Ichigo logo on the back there, which is really nice. There you go. Let's better look at it. So yeah, has the horns and all that then. And this is actually the third time I'm filming this specific segment, because the first time the footage got corrupted. The second time it just wasn't up to my standard, and there's a lot of mistakes there. So this is the third time I've had to put on this cosplay to film this segment, but gotten really good at putting it on here, and don't mind putting it on because I love this thing. But you can see the scarf. There you go. And then here are the tactical gloves. I really like these gloves here. And here I have the sleeves rolled up just because when they weren't rolled up, they made the proportions of the arm look a little weird. So that's why they're done like that. And the leather jacket sleeves, actually, the way that they are, kind of look like the wrist brace on there, which is a nice touch. So there's that, and obviously here is pretty much really the only thing that's like custom made. The chest armor, which I think turned out pretty well for a beginner here, and the trench coat, really like that. It's light. It's not the same material as we talked about before, but it allows me to act more like a cape and stuff. And this thing is very, very long. It goes up to like my ankle. It goes out to my ankle. Of course, the DX belt here. Boom. Of course, we have the side buckles here, like in the movie. Of course, the belt isn't the same color, but that's not a big deal because the trench coat is covering it all. And yeah, that's pretty much it for how it looks like this. Now, of course, just like in the film, I can essentially wrap this up here. This way, no one really knows that I'm actually secretly a freaking Kamen Rider. Yeah. Now the belt does bulge out a little bit, and the chest armor also kind of pokes out a little bit, but it's not too bad. You can see here, I'm just a normal civilian and totally not a Kamen Rider. And you know, it's actually really comfortable to wear, which is really nice, because I know a lot of cosplays, the mobility is not that great, and also like even sitting down might be like a whole ordeal. But this because it's mostly just regular clothes, it feels nice. Really, the only thing that is inhibited is the chest armor really goes up to here, so I can't go any further past this point. I can't really cross my arms too well, but that's not a big deal, because everything else is pretty mobile here. Let me see. Boop. Boop. Yeah, I put in the helmet here again. Boom. That. And obviously in the movie, it automatically closes, but I'm not that fancy, so gotta put it in with magnets. Now this is a little finicky, but once you do it enough time, you know, you get used to it, you know how it works. There we go. That should be on pretty well. There you go. And here I am. Hongo. Do do do. I can do all the Kamen Rider poses, you know, like Shoko. Enemies. Boom. 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 Boshaka. Yeah. There's that. I don't know if you can see this, but it's me in the 70s. Really thought I had a lot more to talk about here, but I guess it really was just the journey we made along the way. That's how it's said. Yeah, I can see pretty well. Not super as well as obviously without the helmet. But it's very hot in here and sweaty. But man, I'm sure I look so good on camera right now. And here it is without the trench coat. Now this cosplay is not really made to be displayed without the trench coat. But I thought I might as well show you what it would look like without it. You can see it's missing the arm, the wrist brace, as well as the wing on the back. But, you know, it's not too bad. It's still flexible, still movable. Here. Yeah, I can even do that. The scene from the movie where he just like that. This is what this looks like, and yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much it with the cosplay. So hope you guys enjoy, and I plan on filming a little funny YouTube short or something with this, so I guess you can stay tuned for that. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.